welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. We've got some news to cover, things that's just happened in the last couple of days, but I also want to, towards the end of this video, talk about something that, well, it is news, and it's also some kind of, intel that I've been getting, and it all kind of fits together well. Something that we should probably be aware of, because while you can find little bits in the news about it, there's not anything really being talked about in the forefront, and it could be something that's looming in the near future. So we want to cover that as well as get some of this news out of the way, because it's always something. It's always something, but it's good for us to keep our eyes on what's kind of happening around us, so that it helps us gauge a little bit better the coming collapse and disaster that we will all face, which is why we keep preparing. It's why we keep getting our stockpiles ready. You need to be stocking up on food and seeds and having a water supply pretty solid. Ammunition, definitely be stocking up on that. Medical supplies, definitely stocking up on that. Just getting yourselves ready. And of course, this week, you need to be focused on whether or not you're ready for this coming cold. Do you have enough wood, fuel, blankets, clothing? If your pipes, all taped up and secure so they don't burst in when it gets really cold. So just a lot of stuff to talk about. Anyways, let's get on with this, because this is good. Another one, folks. This is not a coincidence, okay? You're just not gonna make me believe it's a coincidence. Another massive explosion rips through Russia. Oil and gas fields are ablaze, okay? We've been seeing this stuff happen quite a bit lately. Shopping malls blow up, planes blow up, oil fields blow up, all in Russia. Gas pipes blowing up. So there's definitely some attacks going on. Maybe it's unofficial, but I don't believe that this is a coincidence. And usually, from what we're hearing in the news, neither does Russia. They're blaming the United States on this. So this kind of activity, if it continues, could definitely expand the conflict going on over in Russia and Ukraine. A perfect storm, speaking of storms, we've been talking about the weather. A perfect storm arrives in the car market, okay? We've got inflation, we've got people hurting financially, and interest rates are increasing, and it's causing a mass of repossessions happening. And they're expecting this to only continue to happen. And a lot of people in the auto market is saying that this is an epic disaster. This is a crippling part of our economy, that all of these car repossessions are happening and will continue happen. So it's not a sign of a strong and healthy economy. I know when you watch the mouthpiece at the White House, the woman that stands behind the podium speaking for the president, according to her, this is just about the strongest economy in American history. Speaking of how strong we are as a nation right now, cities are preparing for a surge of immigrants due to the ending of Title 42 this week. We've been talking about this a little bit more on this channel and showing you the grand influx of people running across the border and how bad it's getting, and it's just going to get worse. They're really preparing for this. In fact, so much so that the state of Texas has placed its National Guard, its military, on standby for a surge at the border. Some of the estimates coming out are, 15,000 or more a day could easily be crossing that border, which sounds like a lot, but honestly, it's not a whole lot more than what they've already been getting coming across. I mean, just there in El Paso, Texas alone, over the last week or so, they've been averaging 2,500 to 5,000 people a day in that one spot, not the entire border, okay? We're not talking the whole border. We're just talking in that one spot, that one city, El Paso. 2,500 to 5,000 people a day. It's insane. Moving on to other things. Hey, we're homesteaders and we're preppers. Do you have your animal antibiotics stocked up? Do you have livestock, pets, things like that? Well, starting here in a couple of weeks, starting in 2023, some FDA laws are changing on the availability to, get antibiotics for your animals. Up until now, and I have some on hand because, well, we have livestock here. And I can go down to the local feed farm store and I can buy me a bottle of penicillin for my animals. I can buy other types of antibiotics usually pretty easily. You just pick them up off the shelf and hand them some money at the register, and that's it. Those laws have been changed, or rules, I'll say. Those rules have been changed by the FDA, and now those antibiotics are going to start being regulated come next year. And you're going to need a vet's prescription to get those. So it's a big deal, and a lot of people are trying to stockpile right now because they see this happening. I mean, you can make your own decisions on this. I'm not telling you what to do with these antibiotics or if they can be used for things that aren't four-legged critters. But even so, this is going to put a hurt on a lot of farmers, a lot of you small farmers. You have some goats, sheep, maybe a few cows. You don't have the money to constantly be going to a vet every time one of them has the sniffles or every time one of them gets an injury that you need to give them a run of penicillins to keep infections down. This is going to hurt a lot of small farmers and big farmers, but I suspect the small ones and just something to be thinking about. Maybe you should be stocking up on some livestock antibiotics before 2023 gets here. Oh, this one here I wanted to throw in because this is an interesting one. This one kind of caught me off guard a little bit when I was just perusing the news sources. U.S. prisons. This is a recent article. Okay, in U.S. prisons, seeds are prized contraband for prisoners looking to grow their own food. What? So I started reading the article, and basically it's talking about these maximum security prisons, and a lot of them, and I'm not complaining that they do this, they don't get a lot of good food. Their food is like powdered eggs, reconstituted powdered eggs, and there's some of these prisons that they don't give them the greatest food. It's enough to keep them alive, but they certainly aren't getting a good deal on what they're eating. And in this one prison in Georgia, they were allowed to start a greenhouse and growing, plants and stuff. And so the prisoners really started liking having that fresh vegetables. But during all of this pandemic and the economy slowing down and the supply chain problems, they're not able to get seeds, okay? And so the seeds, because the prisoners really like their fresh tomatoes and their cantaloupe and their watermelon that they're able to grow, the seeds have actually become a pretty hot commodity in the prison, and they're using them just almost as they would drugs or tobacco, selling and trying to get a hold of them. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this is that we as preppers, we say this every once in a while, that seeds could be a real big bartering tool, and so you should stock up on them, and that if they ever get in short supply, it's going to be pretty bad for a lot of people. And I think this is a pretty good example of what could happen. Strongly want to encourage you to make sure you stock up on some seeds. You also want to make sure that you're storing them properly. If you're not storing seeds properly, they don't last very long. They need to be in kind of a cold storage. In fact, a lot of these big seed vaults that exist around the world that they store seeds from all over the world, they freeze them, and it makes them last longer. You don't want any sunlight on them. You want them to stay cold, and they will last a while that way. But you definitely want to make sure you have enough seeds, because as things continue to get worse and as prices of food continue to go up, I suspect that people will be buying them more. They'll be growing more of their own food, okay? Which could cause a supply, issues on seeds. So this should just be a good, healthy reminder that we should probably be stocking up on seeds, because even in prisons, they can become contraband. And then we're going to shift gears here, and this is news, but it's also some intel, and I, you know how intel goes. You can't always divulge where you get it. So you can believe this or not, but there's some news I have to back up this intel. I got some very good information from a trusted source. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but it's someone that I know personally. It's trusted. It's out of Africa. Okay, we've been hearing about Africa, the continent, in the news a bit lately. Biden wants to give them several $billions to try to get them off of coal and all this kind of stuff. Well, he has been in Africa recently in let's say a government position, working for Uncle Sam. We'll put it that way. And he said that we should be really focusing a lot on the U.S., Africa, and China-Africa relations. He said maybe even more so than we focus on Russia, that there's a lot going on there, and that it could be the next battleground place. This could be the place that a real war between us and China is fought over. And as I start digging around, well, I find pretty much that is in the news. China has been building up a big stronghold in Africa for years. And they're building some pretty solid relationships there. And a lot of Africa is a very mineral rich, oil rich, diamonds, gold, all kinds of stuff like that in Africa. And China is moving in, and they're working with them by running the mining operations or running the oil rigs or whatever it is. And so there's a lot of relationships being built there. And honestly, on the surface, China looks to be doing a better job at having relationships with African nations than we have in the past. So this is going to be something that could be serious. Here's an article here. The U.S. military is worried about China as it moves into Africa. Here's another one. China or Africa. This is exactly what the information that I was getting, the intel. Africa could be a massive battlefield in an inevitable war between U.S. and China as Xi Jinping and China stakes its claim on the continent. This is something that a lot of people aren't aware of right now. You have to kind of dig around the news to find information about it, but this is definitely a strong possibility, and it's just adding to the whole wars and rumors of wars. We get ourselves involved with Ukraine and possibly engaged with Russia. We get ourselves involved with Taiwan and possibly get ourselves engaged with China there. And now it's possible we could be getting ourselves in the midst of something with Africa and China. Here's a U.S. Defense Department website saying generals say China is seeking a naval base in West Africa. So there's a lot of build up in that area. Now, I'm not saying that we're weeks or even months away from possible conflict in Africa between us and China. But I'm saying that it's possible that that's what's headed into the future. A lot of you that understand what happens as world powers rise and as they fall, usually as they start to get weaker, the next rising world power is gonna challenge them at every place they can. And that's exactly what China has been doing for a while. They're challenging our position around the world, our currency's prominence, and then our prominence in places like Africa. And right now it looks as if they're winning for the most part. And at some point, it's very possible that a confrontation could happen. At some point, usually when you have the rising nations competing against the falling nations, the falling world leader, it usually has to be settled in some kind of conflict. That's how history looks at it. You can go back for hundreds of years in history and watch as the world power starts to kind of fade. The next one coming up usually ends up having to fight them to prove their dominance on the global stage. So are we headed towards a war with China? It's very possible. And right now that is how it looks. So what do you and I need to be doing? The same thing we do all the time. We need to be preparing. We need to be getting ready for that, because as bad as a war with Russia would be for us, I assure you a war with China would be substantially worse. We, as much as we hate to admit it as a nation, we are heavily dependent upon China because of all their cheap goods that we get from them. We do very little manufacturing anymore. It's all done in China, and if that is cut off from us, it would be pretty devastating. So folks, you need to be getting ready, getting your preps in order. and building connections with others around you so that you can start building your little mags, your tribe, your community, whatever it is. Because things just continually look worse on this. And as America's status as the world leader continues to crumble, I think this kind of stuff is just going to be becoming more and more relevant. Folks, it's time to get your houses in order. Prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.